Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of council tonight on February 16th, 2023. I will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will now go directly into our budget process, and we will start with consideration of community development grant applications. Is there any staff that would like to speak to that, or should we just go right into consideration?
We maybe should point out that that is page 67 in your document. I just looked that up and wanted to show off that I knew what it was. And this is really council's, it's like a policy issue, so this is really up to council. We know that some of the groups that have made grant requests are available tonight if there's any questions. We weren't expecting them to do presentations, but in case council has any questions, that's what this is here for, and council or staff will be satisfied, or the staff can try and answer any questions if they come up too, but staff would be satisfied with whatever direction council heads. So this is your policy. We'll turn it over to you to have a discussion about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graves. We have the organizations who have applications before us on the screen. Does council have any questions regarding the grant applications or any comments on them? Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, please.
Sorry, I was looking down the list and trying to see if, I just wanted to make sure that junior achievement was on there. And I guess my question would be, we gave 650 last year. They're an organization who are not in our community. They're not based out of our community. So I would like to know how many of our community that they did reach out to. And they've asked for an increase, so I'm wondering how many extras they are looking at doing to reaching out to with that extra money then, if that's the case.
Okay. We do have a representative on Zoom? Yes. Perfect.
Yes.
I believe it's Karen Gallant.
That's correct. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here tonight and for your consideration of our application. We were very fortunate to receive funding from the town of Ingersoll last year, and we did deliver a couple of programs within your city. So we actually delivered 2 programs last year, which was more than what the funding provided would have covered. And this year we already have a request for 1 program in a school in Ingersoll. So we certainly do have demand specifically from the schools and teachers in Ingersoll for our programs. In terms of the increase being requested, as with every organization, we have inflationary pressures that we are under. And so we are looking to deliver 1 program again this year with that increased amount.
Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, please.
Hi, Karen. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you tell me how many within those 2 programs, how many kids you've reached then?
Yes, so we would have reached almost 50 students. Most classes are about 25 students each. I can certainly pull the specific figures for you. I just would need a minute to go back to our database to pull that, but it would have been almost 50 students as a result of that funding.
So if I'm to understand correctly, then you're only looking at delivering 1 program then, and so that will be only 25 students then?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
And so if we were to keep the amount of money the same, Karen, then would we be looking at I mean, I just don't understand. I guess I don't agree with the fact that we would be increasing it to $1,000. I understand that the 1,000 wasn't enough to reach all of the 2 programs. However, I have a problem with us only reaching 25 students and an increase in costs as well. So just if you can explain maybe why you're increasing it, but yet decreasing the number of kids that you're reaching.
So last year, from the funding that we received from the township, we were able to deliver one program. We generated more funding so we could respond to the other requests to reach the second class. And this year, because of inflationary pressures, as I mentioned, we have compensation, we have increased program material costs, increased utilities costs, things like that. That's why we're looking at an increase. So it would be the same number of students as we had applied for funding last year. Just last year, we were able to raise some additional funding through our other general operations to support the delivery of the second class.
Are there any further questions for Ms. Gallant? Deputy Mayor Wilson, please.
Through you, Mayor. Just a final question then. Do you expect there's a chance that you'll be able to get more funding from other organizations to increase the students? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but is that kind of the intention as the year goes on? Or will you just work with what you're given from the town of Ingersoll?
Well, we always try to deliver programs, as many as we can, through whatever means possible. When we receive funding from a particular funder, in this case, the town of Ingersoll, we are then very committed to ensuring that we fulfill the requirements of that funding, which ensures that we deliver the program in Ingersoll. We always strive to raise more money from other sources, but we do not have consistent sources of funding. We don't get government funding through the Ministry of Education, for example. So it's always an annual process for us to raise those funds. We very much appreciate the support that you've given us in the past and would do our best to fulfill any commitments that we would have under this particular grant as well. And we already know we have a request for a class in Ingersoll, so that would not be a problem.
Excellent. So if I did some quick math, 25 students, $1,000, that's $40 a student, which I see as pretty reasonable for a program. Of course, nothing's cheap or free these days. And of course, there is cost associated with it. So yes, it's $1,000 for 25 children, but at $40 a person, I think it seems more reasonable on the surface of it. Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens?
One last question for Karen, if I may. Karen, what's the ages? I apologize, it was a while ago that I read your report, but what are the ages that we're reaching for the kids? Is it high school or is it in the elementary schools?
Elementary schools, grade 7 and 8 students. So right at that cusp of where they're learning all those important financial literacy skills, how to budget, how to save, considering first jobs, how to earn money, how to invest, how to give back to the community as well.
Excellent. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Gallant.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Are there any other questions for any of the other organizations? Seeing none. Would any of the representatives from the organizations like to say anything? Seeing none. Thank you very much. We will now move on to, I don't know. Yeah, we'll now move on to the 2023 operating budget presentation, and I will turn that over to our treasurer. Irina, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just waiting on the presentation. Yes. Sorry, just... Okay. So tonight we are going to present the second draft of our 2023 operating budget. So hopefully it's a final draft. If not, then there is another meeting scheduled for next Thursday, I believe. So we'll go through pretty much the same points as last time. So I will highlight the operating budget. We'll look at property tax impact, community grant applications we already reviewed, and then we will review each of the departments and where we're going to finish the year in terms of reserves and reserve funds. So the budget process, we already went through the first three. We are at the last box here, so we're meeting tonight to review and hopefully approve our operating budget. So the priorities, they haven't changed since the last time I presented a month ago. So we are looking at no reduction in services, minimizing our tax rate impact, aligned with council's strategic priorities. We're looking at no debt, manage our reserve funds, and continue investing in infrastructure. So some of the challenges, again, it's rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, very competitive labor market, continuing COVID pandemic. We don't see as much of it right now, but we don't know where it could turn. And also there's some of the challenges that come from the last legislation, Bill 23, and large tax appeals and loss of assessment. So we are still waiting on the decision on the large tax appeal for our large industrial here, the KME plant, GM, General Motors. So that's been incorporated into this budget. So we are estimating what it could be. So we're setting money aside to address that in the future. So the operating budget as presented today is $17.5 million and $3.4 million included transfers to reserves. So since the last submission that was presented on January 16th, staff has made some adjustments, and they increased the levy requirements by about $9,600, and the package explains every single adjustment we made to the budget. So looking at the revenue sources, so the tax levy is our main revenue source and comprises 80% of our total revenues. So we are proposing a levy of $16.8 million, an increase of $374,000 over 2022, or 2.27%. That's the levy increase. So this graph just represents where the tax dollars, where the levy is, how we distribute amongst our different service areas. So it hasn't changed. The $9,200 did not change the split. That's just a different view of how a tax bill for a median home. So it's $22,000. That's only our share, only town share, how it's distributed through the variety of services we offer in Ingersoll. So now going to tax impact. So that 2.27% levy increase, what it's going to mean for a median single-family home. So we're looking at a 1% increase in tax rate or a $20 increase for a house that valued at $222,000. It's our median. So pretty much same increases will, like about 1% will, other property classes will see, like the industrial and commercial classes.
Sorry, Irina, I'm just
Yes.
gonna, if I could, and how would you like to take questions? Would you like us to wait to the end, or would you like anybody who has a question?
Open to however council is.
So if you have a question, yeah, just raise it, and then we can, we'll do that. What I wanted to do here is, again, I know there's going to be people at home that say nobody has a $220,000 house. That's not the case in how it works with assessment. It's your assessed value that impact gives you. So, of course, we know that housing prices have changed a lot, but the assessment hasn't changed since 2016, which is the last time they did an assessment. We're due for a new one. The government has not made a decision on that. as of yet, which is explained in the budget package as well. So there are a lot of houses that are assessed way under what would be market value, but that doesn't change the rate of tax you pay. It's just the assessed value times the tax rate will give you what your tax bill will be. So don't fret if you think that your house is now worth $600,000 and where this is for a $222,000. It's all based off your assessment. Councillor Ayus.
That's exactly what I was going to ask
Okay.
the question on, was the assessments.
Yeah, so,
Yes, and the $222,000 assessment is for a median, so there is just as many houses below that number as just and above that number. So, so roughly, I would say, so for $100,000 of assessment, the increase will be about $10, $9. So.
So, as the mayor mentioned earlier, and through him to you, Irina, when Impact does come with their new assessments for our housing here in Ingersoll, and there will be increases, we know there will be increases, how is that going to affect the tax rate?
It's difficult to say at this point because we don't know what other classes will be assessed at. As you remember, maybe 6 years ago, farm properties were really assessed high, and that's when county decided to decrease the ratio, farm ratio, to ensure that they are equitably taxed. So the same will probably happen when the reassessment happens. It might not happen in 2023, maybe it will be another year. But so it's hard to say if everything increases proportionally by same percentages. I don't see a big impact on the residential properties, but if the residential properties increase at a higher rate than, for example, industrial or commercial or farm properties, then the burden will be shifted on the residential properties. But at this point, I can't speculate, I can't say. But what I can say is the tax rate will be recalculated based on the assessment. So it most likely will decrease the tax rate to compensate for that, because if assessment increases by 20%, I'm just throwing this number, I'm not saying it will, then our levy is it's not going to increase by 20%. It will increase by 2-3%, whatever it's going to be. So the tax rate then will decrease by 18%, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, would be that fact. So if your house went from 222,000 to, or say it's 200,000 to 400,000, your tax exposure is not going to double.
Not going to double,
Right.
no. But
So
what it's going to be, I cannot
Right,
say
yeah,
at
no,
this
I understand. Whatever the tax levy increase would be, it would be, basically, we need X number of dollars to run the municipality. We're not going to say, okay, everybody's tax is going to double. It's going to remain similar because we need, like I said, $17,000, or $17 million to run the municipality. So we still just need that 17 million, whether your house is worth 400,000 or 200,000.
Yes, but the burden between classes may change again, depending on what the increases for other classes. So currently, I believe our burden for residential is about 65% of our taxes are paid by by residents. So if the residential assessment goes, we'll see a higher increase in comparison to that burden may shift to like 70% or 75%, or may not. Like, I can't say.
yeah, every year the county looks at the class, the tax ratios, and then makes a decision on it. So they do have some power to switch that around. A little fun fact is that actually the farm class is not paying what's recommended as their tax burden, but they lowered it. So there's usually a report that goes along with that, and then the council has to make a decision, and there's some political stuff in there as well, so.
Yes. So usually that report comes to county council about in March. So I would just advise maybe to look just on the agenda. I believe it will be in March, this first meeting of March for county council. So the operating budget highlights, as mentioned before, high investment income. So we see some, the interest rates have increased significantly. That helps us to generate more of investment income. We are utilizing a lot of, it's a great opportunity right now to invest in like the GICs, which we can as municipality. So we, I believe as of today, I have invested about $10 million in the GICs that will mature during the year. So they are no longer than 1 year GICs. So this is great. We continue investing in our infrastructure through transfers to reserves, and also look at our asset management plan. So that's all part of the strategy that was approved through asset management plan. We continue investing in our in the future multi-use recreational facility. So this budget incorporates a $300,000 transfer to reserve for this purpose, and it's a $50,000 increase from 2022 budget. We also looking at 3.5, so the overall transfers to reserve increased by 260,000, and it's just divvy up between various reserves we have. We're also looking at the cost of living adjustments and of 3.5% for our staff, full-time, part-time, service boards, etc. Looking at enhancing our bylaw enforcement, incorporated a $50,000 budget to begin this in 2023. Insurance cost, again, increased by about $100,000 compared to last year. So we are planning to go to market about April, May for next year insurance, for next year's renewal. With some savings in our professional fees, landfill consulting fees. We're not going to have that expense in this year, 2023. Our OMPF allocation have decreased by $26,000. So this OMPF funding, it just goes down every year by 15%. 15% of last year is gone. So eventually it will come to zero. So, sorry, yes. And just the last point, the OPP contract savings have been incorporated in this budget, and the savings of $210,000.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. And I'm not sure if this is a good question for Irina or basically staff. With regards to the insurance, have we or would we consider looking into self-insuring, partnering with other municipalities in that regards, in an effort to see if there's any savings that can be had?
Mr. Graves?
Yeah, there are a number of municipalities that have looked at coalitions and forming their own groups. It's becoming more common. It is not a bad way to go, but you need a pretty broad base of municipalities. But you also want, it's probably best to be with sort of like municipalities. So I have at the OMAA conferences tried to spur some conversations between Oxford, Elgin, and Middlesex municipalities to say, is there anyone that's interested in this? But we need some more interest. I haven't been able to get a whole lot of traction on that. There are a number in Kitchener-Waterloo area that are doing it, but the settlements that they get there may be very different than ours. So I don't think it'd be beneficial to try and join their group. I don't think they'd want us to. So it is something we're exploring, but and we had a good presentation at the last conference about that. It takes several years to set up, and getting people to join together on that is paramount. And you really sort of need everybody to come together. So I think it's something we could explore and continue to explore.
The good thing that we are seeing now is there is starting to see some more competition in the market, which, whether it's a hard market or not, when there's only limited suppliers, you're going to get increased fees or chance for monopolies. So we are being told that there's more increased a chance, because we went out for tender before and there was only our current supplier, which doesn't give you a lot of choice. So hopefully we will have better luck this year. So I support that.
We will just start the process. We'll give them 2-3 months to respond, so it's not going to be just a month. Maybe that was another area for improvement, to give the insurance and underwriters enough time to actually come up with the proposal. And for self-insured, I just want council to know that our insurer provides us some services, like they review our agreements, they look at some legal costs, or legal, like, or for example, they do assess our like parks so they provide some extra services that is part of the cost, but they're very valuable. Otherwise, we would have to reach out and pay extra for that. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
I just want to, I think, oh, we're on the same slide. So through you, Mayor, I just had a couple of questions about the cost of living and the step increases for staff. So we talked a little bit about it at the previous meeting, that some local area municipalities had approved like 5 to 7, but also considering there are public servants around like 1 and members of the public that will get no increase at all. So we're, sensitive to those conversations. And I know that staff have taken lots into consideration beyond, it's not as simple as tying it to consumer price index, for example. So I was hoping staff could talk about, all of the factors that you took into consideration. I'm really confident in the recommendation from staff, and I think the rest of council may be as well. But just for the benefit of the public, just sharing some of the things that were taken into consideration.
Mr.
The
Grace.
CEO would like to, yes, comment on that?
I lost the rock, paper, scissors. So, but, exactly. Yeah, she's really good at that. Yeah, so we did take a lot into consideration in this, and council will be aware that only a few years ago, we upgraded our pay equity plan, and as we're required to do, and council moved at that time to P50, and just in 2022, we moved to P60, which means your rating, so you want to be at least 60% of your comparators, you want to be on target for that, and we are. But because we did that, there are a number of employees that are still moving through their steps. So that's something else to consider, is that some employees will still get their step increases, which will be a factor as well, and up that amount from 3.5. That was also coupled with the fact that we took a look at all the municipalities around us. Several of them had consumer price index ratings, which was very high. There were some that were not doing that, were lower. And we tried to pick something that was in the middle of all that, and we came up with 3.5%, we felt was the middle of our nearest comparators. And I know of one other municipality in Oxford County that's now looking at doing the same exact thing, and they came up with 3.5% as well. So those were factors as well. Since we had, during COVID, we didn't do what the province did, where there was inflation of almost 0% or something. They just stayed with low amounts for their employees. We actually did during those times, because we moved to P50 and P60, we also did some 2% and stuff to make sure that pay equity plan didn't fall behind. And then lastly, it's our intention to go to market next year. We normally would go back to market in 2025 to make sure that we're still on par with our comparators. But because the market is changing so much, we do intend to go forward with a market analysis next year. So all those factors came together to get us to this point. The other thing I'd like to express is that we do intend, and we are planning to bring forward in March, the work-life balance report to council for staff. And I've heard it even more in the last couple of weeks from staff, that wages is not as much of a concern. I think staff feels we're on the right path to make sure that we're competitive, but work-life balance is more important to staff, and I think you're seeing that in a number of municipalities and a number of other professions as well. So it would be our suggestion that we stay with 3.5% and that we do that work-life balance, and council gives that some consideration. So a lot went into getting to this point, and that's a lot of those factors that we took into consideration when we made this choice.
Excellent explanation. Any other further questions? Deputy Mayor, please.
Just one follow-up then, I guess, for council's consideration is, through my conversations with staff and my peers, a lot of care did go into making this recommendation. So I'm curious if for the future, that could have been put into a report so that, that care and consideration could be reflected through the process.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the past, we did bring a report to council, was part of, I believe it was August, September, was part of the report that we set our budget dates, and that's where we propose the wage increases. But this year was a little bit different because of the election. We didn't feel as it would be fair for, yes, so it was postponed. But we will absolutely do that going forward.
Excellent. Any further questions right now? Seeing none, please continue.
So some of the special projects that staff are recommending for completion in 2023. So we are, for the corporate services, we're looking at implementing the email module for the tax bills. So this, we haven't began the process. We received all the costing, and Great Plains Central Square, who are our provider, they are ready. They just need to hear from us, and we can start implementing this. Same for accounts payable automation software. This is another project for the finance department. We're looking at streamlining this process and making it completely paperless, and with a lot of, it's mostly paperless and some time savings as well. So we're looking at efficiency. It's a joint project between County of Oxford and Tillsonburg, Town of Tillsonburg. The clerk's department is looking at doing the downtown parking review, which is, I believe, a needed project because we are reaching our limits. So we need to look at what we need, and just maybe starting next year, we can start implementing the recommendations. And then the development charges study and bylaw is due this year, and we budgeted $35,000 for this project. So this is the last year when we can use the development charges to fund the studies. So first of all, we have to update our development charges with all of the changes through Bill 23. And also it's been 5 years since last time we updated it. So for building inspections, for any of our protection services, again, it's the bylaw enforcement. So we are planning on using third party to provide these services. I believe we're going to use commissionaries to start this year, and then we can reevaluate and make a decision what we're going to do, whether or not it's going to be a department or we will continue with the outside agency for next year's budget. And also the building department is in the process of finishing the building fee study. They have done the bulk of the work last year, but there is still a bit of work to complete this year, and then they will present the study to council for consideration.
Just before we go on, I did want to comment on the bylaw enforcement. I think this is the right direction, and we'll certainly, staff will provide a review, and we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open in the community as well, and then we can always look at that service level going forward, whether we want to increase it or if it's adequate. But it's a good starting point to get that out there. So super excited about moving forward with more bylaw enforcement. It's something the town's really, the town residents have really wanted in a cost-effective way. Councilor Hughes.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I don't know, would you happen to know what our percentage of paperless communications are in regards to the different AR and the AP within the town of Ingersoll, even with the sending out of tax bills for the year? Do we do a lot of that paperless, or is it still?
Tax bills are all printed currently. That was part of actually municipal act. We had to print the tax bills, but COVID helped us. So now we can, in a way, so now we can send them through emails. So that's what the email module will help us with. So currently it's all printed and mailed physically. As for accounts receivable, it's pretty much 95% paperless, because we issue bills with just email the bills, and we don't have a lot of accounts receivable. So the majority of our accounts receivable is property taxation. And we can issue bills to the county or any other just random billing for something, like the residents for some kind of job that Public Works Department did. So it's minimal, and it's pretty much all paperless. Accounts payable, I would say probably 70% paperless at this point. We are using Laserfish to approve. Again, it's due to COVID. We had to make these changes. However, Laserfish, it does not meet our needs 100%. So that's why we're looking at something more specific to accounts payable that will allow us to completely go paperless, because Laserfish has the licenses and they limited, and anyway, so it's not really geared for accounts payable, but we are doing a lot of it paperless. We receive invoices. We try to encourage our vendors to email us invoices, not to mail us invoices. So we went before, let's say 6 years ago, it was all checks. So we would print checks and mail checks to our vendors. So now it's probably 80%, it's all electronic payments. So there is no printing involved. So hopefully, but unfortunately not everyone can receive through electronic transfer. So some businesses or individuals would like to have a check. So for payroll, we used to send pay stubs by mail. We don't do it anymore. We do send some employees that don't have internet, but it's minimal. It's maybe 12 people at the most. Same with T4s, for example. It's all can be downloaded online. And of course, we have to mail them for staff that are no longer working for the town. So I hope I answered your question. Okay. So for the recreational cultural services, again, the museum was looking at creating a video content to promote tourism and capture history of the town. So we budgeted $10,000 for that. And there is some upgrades at our ball diamonds and facilities. So that's not what we do. We don't do it every year. So some upgrades to the washrooms and carpets at the VPCC. Any questions on this?
Since Councillor Bowman's not here, I will just update council. The museum's content, what the board found was that we were able to get a bunch of TVs to mount throughout the facility through the grant that came through. And so a lot of our volunteers are either no longer with us, or they're getting to the age where they are the ones that know the information. So we really want to create a content so that can be carried on, and those stories can be continue to be told without having to do a lot of research to find out how something works. So. Curtis.
Well, and we also want to do a video, something like what we showed you on Monday night with the attraction video that, like for industry, we want to do some sort of a tourism promotion video as well to drive visitors to town and to the museum. And those are fairly cost effective. So the $10,000 should go and cover both projects. So just an explanation on that.
So, budget also incorporates new full-time positions. So we are asking for a deputy treasurer position, a full-time position for the finance department with the start date June, July of 2023. The start date is, first of all, the budget hasn't been approved, so we hopefully will approve it in February, but then the actually hiring process and selection process can take some time as well. And we are running out of room here, so we have to look at reorganizing some of the offices upstairs and downstairs to accommodate some additional people in the building. So we're looking at adding another union position for public works operator with the start date as soon as possible, again, with the budget, so hopefully they will start process sometime in March hiring. At VPCC, there was, that department was reorganized last year. That led to not necessary, so we've created some positions, but some positions were eliminated as well. So, but looking at the net impact, we're looking at 2 new positions of one is VPCC staff manager and staff supervisor. One position is field, and I believe another one is almost field position. So that's 2 FTEs for Victoria Park Community Center. Museum, we're looking at hiring assistant curator to help our curator, again, with the start date tentative June, could be later, maybe a little bit sooner. We will see how the hiring process goes, but the budget is for 6 months. And 2 summer students for Public Works. They have been asking for some help, so we are proposing to add 2 summer students for Public Works.
Irina, these are full-time positions. Do we have a number of full-time equivalents year over year, or?
Yes, I can produce that information. I don't have it at my disposal right now,
no, that's
but
fair.
we do have FTEs, yes. It fluctuates, and unfortunately with COVID, over the last 2 years, it's really, like, I can create the numbers, but they're not really reflective of a normal year.
No, and I'll be so glad when we get past the COVID years for budget impacts, because it is very skewing of the information. So it makes it very hard to look at the past to see apples to apples. It truly does. So, no, it was just more of a question. But you answered it. Thank you.
And I believe, like, it's just off the top of my head, the total, the full-time and part-time, it's about 96 FTEs, I believe, but I don't want to, it's about that number. So we already reviewed the grant applications. So the amount requested is $41,000. I included in the budget a little bit extra, just so council may have some, I believe I included $3,000 extra, because we sometimes we get requests during the year, so council has the budget to meet those requests.
So if there is any discussion, I think this is a good time on this to give direction to staff. Is everybody comfortable with the grants that are here? I'm certainly fine with the dollar amount. This is much lower, and it's come down over the years significantly into a reasonable level. I see it as a great way to be able to give money to those who are helping the community achieve goals that we all share, whether it be through helping others who are less fortunate or providing services through the service clubs as well, but certainly open to any discussion on that. Councilor Van Kooten-Bosens?
Well, I think you could all tell where I was kind of going with JA. I'm not going to hold up the budget, but I do have a concern with the fact that we are increasing the amount of money. Again, it's an organization that's not in this community. It's hard to be a part of that when it's outside of our community. They don't have anybody on their board from within our community. They're decreasing the number of kids that they're reaching now within the public school in that respect. And they're asking for more money. So I have an issue with that one. I would prefer to leave them at the 650, and I would like them to go out and try to find the other money to support. You're right, Mayor Petrie, when you said it is $40 per student, but it's selected students and it's only 25, whereas last year we reached 50. So that's my concern. I have personally no concerns with any of the rest that are on here. I think that some of them have asked for some increases, which I think it's just, normal for some of them to ask for those increases. Interchurch and Lunch Bunch have actually asked for less this year, and I'm not sure how they're doing it, but they're doing it. So I think that's great, and I think you're right. A lot of these are reaching a lot of people in our community, but JA is my concern. So thank you.
Councilor Hudson?
Thank you. I think she said the money that we gave last year, the 650, went towards 25 kids, and the 1,000 will go towards 25 kids as well. Am I correct? She said they reached 50, but they raised extra money for the other 25.
And I would agree with you on that, but the problem is that they have never come back to us and told us or anything other than here at budget time. We don't hear from them. So the fact that they're reaching 25, then go out and reach out to other community organizations. I'm a part of a few, and we've received nothing from JA. And it just bothers me that, I'm hoping, like, it's within the school. So how come they're having to, I'm not seeing the numbers. There's a lot of overhead for this company. And I understand that everybody needs to be paid, don't get me wrong, but if we're delivering services, then everybody needs to tighten their belt as well. So, but thank you, I appreciate that.
Perfect. No, you've been very consistent on this. You were not in favor last year, so I respect that. No, I do. It's something, it's certainly a viewpoint, and that's what we're here for. So I do agree. They're saying that to provide the service for 25 kids, they will need $1,000. So I don't think 650 will do it. They did. Ms. Gallant did mention that the 50 was reached because they were able to do additional fundraising. I think last year's conversation came around that we're hoping that, yes, it was only reaching 25 students, but we're hoping others in the community would reach out, see the benefit of it, and sponsor other classrooms to make sure that number went up. To be fair to Junior Achievement, usually we don't hear from other grant applications on how they do it till this time of year as well. And we would never ask for them for a report back on if they were successful. So that's something we can certainly make part of our grant process, that we would like to have an update on how the funds were used and what was achieved. There's nothing wrong with a performance metrics to make sure it's going to what we want it to be with any group. But yeah, no, that's up for council's discussion on what they want to do. I just want to do, I want to highlight one, though. I know Nickersville Pipe Band only asks for $1,000 a year. There's been no inflationary increases, but obviously costs go up. They provide a lot of representation for the town. They come to all of our events and perform, and they represent us nationwide. So I'd certainly be open to increasing that amount, just as a token tip of the hat to them, to make sure that they are still able to do that, because transportation costs, all costs are going up for them. But if council's fine with what they've asked for, then that's fine as well. Deputy Mayor, please.
To your previous point, I don't have any issue with the requests we have. They do wonderful work in the community. It's more a question of, like, does our policy reflect the process at this point? Or if there's more information we'd like to see as a follow-up, because even the guidelines say that the grants are not to be relied upon as annual contributions. But that is kind of the position we're in with some of these organizations, again, which I don't have an issue with, but maybe would need to be an opportunity to look at that policy again.
Oh, certainly, we should look at all policies again. My interpretation of not relying on it is the organization shouldn't count on it being there, because it's not 100% guaranteed. They do have to apply every year, and they have to come under consideration. So that's my interpretation of it, because I had the same questions before, and it's just more of how do everybody keep applying every year if it's not supposed to be replied on? But no, it is a year-by-year thing, and council has certainly looked at others ones in the past. There was a large spreadsheet there where we looked at organizations, and it wasn't they weren't providing the service anymore, or they weren't needed anymore, so we did cut them down, and that's where a lot of savings came over the years. So. Councilor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. So back with the Ingersoll Pipe Band request of $1,000, did they send in a submission, or they did send a submission in? Now, I know with a lot of the other some of the other community groups that we refund the municipal portion of the taxes. Have they ever requested that for their building? Is this what this $1,000 would be put towards, or what's the breakout of that, if there is any?
So in the past, it's basically been a stipend to be able to, basically to reward them for, they do come and perform free. So it's just more of a thank you and a gratuity to them to say that we appreciate that. They do apply for it, though. In the past, they didn't make an application, and so it came under question of why are we producing this? And then when it's explained, it's like, okay, but the way everything's fair and everybody can have the same chance, and they make sure if we don't make them apply, then someone says, well, I had to, right? So, and that's fair. That's their process. Any further discussion? Seeing none right now? Okay, we'll move on.
So moving to departmental highlights. So the first one is council, almost $16,000 increase, or 7%. So there is some factors that play into this increase. So there is an increase of $7,000 in meetings and conferences, and that's the biannual trip to Asia. So we're estimating $7,000. There is also a cost of living increase for council members of $9,000, and that amount includes the benefits and the honorarium increases. And the same 3.5% applies to council. So I have received a question to expand on what's included in marketing and promotion budget. So the budget, I believe, is $9,000. If I 9,600, yes. So I just provide some additional information what's in the budget. So we budgeted $4,500 for registration for charity events. We have, usually council participates in golf tournaments or Chamber of Commerce events. So that's what the $4,500 is set aside. It's just an allowance. We don't have a specific events council will attend. It's just council will have to work within the budget to attend the events. We also have $1,000 for town crier, and I don't recall us actually pay, or
There-
did
there
I
hasn't been a
spell
town
it
crier for-
wrongly? Okay, sorry if I didn't. Well, that was one of the lines that I wasn't sure. And also annual meals allowance of $3,500. That's outside of the conferences. It's something that council may have a meeting or have to travel to attend a meeting, so that's what it's for. And the meetings and conferences, we have budgeted for Roma, OGRA, AMO, trip to Japan, and ASUM conference. And we looked at how many, we can't really tell how many members will attend, so we just estimated 3 or 4 councillors will attend each of the conference.
So I'd like to have a discussion with council around this, and I've brought this staff, and I've talked to some already, just in passing, but just like staff, we need to be responsible in our budgeting. When it comes to conferences, we have 12,500 budgeted. We've gone to one conference, we've gone to Roma. We had 4 members go there. My estimation is that probably cost our budget around $600 to $6,500, depending on expenses. There was another conference is approved, which was $1,000, and I thank Councillor Hughes for stepping in and attending that, so that we did have attendance there. But that was $1,000, so we're probably around $700 to $7,500 already of our $12,500 budget. So I'd like council to have a discussion about what further conferences we want to, and how do we see attendance. OGRA, we are a member. Usually that's more of a staff conference. That's the Ontario Good Roads, but there may be value there as well. AMO, I'm certainly interested that we should have delegation there. That's the other one where we can have delegations to the ministers, and we were encouraged at a previous delegation to follow up at AMO. So that being in London would not require travel expenses or hotels, so that would require less funds. And then OSUM, if we go to OSUM, that's in Paris as well, so that's another one that would is traveled by day, so there would be some savings there as well. We don't have there's probably firm dates out there. Would council agree that they would like at least, how do they feel about OSUM? It's the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities. It's later in the year, I believe. AMO is in August, and so being close to home, I imagine we'll have a fairly good representation of council at that one. Yeah, Councillor Hughes, do you have interest in?
Yes, again, the AMO, that is always a good conference. I've been to one in person, and I believe one virtually over the past couple of years. It is a very good opportunity to, as you said, to follow up with delegations, with the ministers that we discussed or we had conversations with back in January. But there's also some very good sessions there, a lot of learning and opportunities to be able to work with that. I've never been to the OSUM, and I think that's in April. April
26th.
Yeah, so
okay.
I would consider that, but if some of the new councillors want to go to get a feel for that, I'd be more than happy to step back and let that process work through for sure.
Councillor Hudson, do you have interest in any of the?
Yes, thanks. The London one, yeah, the AMO, I'd love to go to both, really.
Okay, excellent. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think as someone who's obviously new to this role, I found the conference really valuable. You know, getting to meet my peers, getting to know staff, all those kinds of things. So I think AMO would be great to, you know, build on that learning, but I obviously acknowledge that we need to, you know, we can't do it all. Can't have everyone going to everything. But since we're on the topic, I'll also mention that the Rural Ontario Institute is holding a Canadian Rural and Remote Housing and Homelessness Symposium. So maybe if one of the ones on the list isn't as high on the list this year, this is a smaller, less expensive conference on a pretty high priority issue that might be, and I believe it's in Brantford, so not far. I think the registration is about $300, so maybe something else to consider.
Yeah, and again, well, we did review the policy, so if anybody is interested in going to a conference, again, if you haven't been to one, certainly that's entitled in the policy, and then if you want to go to a second one, feel free to bring that forward to council for consideration. So I think we'll probably have a large contingent at AMO, given that it's in our backyard, and we would love to have an opportunity to showcase our own community, get some information on that as well. And then my guess is that with OSUM, we'll probably have a couple members go to that. So if we can incorporate that into the budget, Irina, is that something that's possible? So we'll probably consider, it's possible that all of council may go to AMO, but there won't be travel costs. And then OSUM would be probably a 2-member contingent. So if we could have, if that still fits within the budget that we have left, that would be, I just want to make sure our budget allocation is fine, or?
Sure, and I just want to say, you know, I think this is great for council to have this discussion. This is your budget, what you want to do. I know the AMO one in London is close by. Still, you might have some mileage for some of those. So there will be some, I don't want to, because our policy is that we would normally, but it will be extremely limited. It won't be very much money. There may be the odd one or counselor that wants to stay, just depending on the events. I just want to give some caution. So I'm saying, don't sell yourself too short. Because sometimes there's events up till, and, you know, either early in the morning or whatever, and if you get a delegation, we saw that at the Roma one where they gave us a delegation on the Sunday, and it was, we were lucky, we got there, pretty good timing, and everything kind of clicked,
Yeah.
but,
No,
you know,
fair
had it not been clicking that way, we might have been more thankful we'd been there the night before or something, but, so I'm just saying, don't sell yourself short, so.
So given that we have a new, it's our first term of this council, and we have a fair amount of new members, I think it's fair that we're probably going to have to increase that budget. And it's probably, I think 15,000 is probably, sorry, 15,000 on, like, it's 19,500, but if we, sorry, it is 12,500, so increase it to 15,000, I think we're going to be more in the ballpark of where we want to go. It tends to, yeah, Councilor Hughes?
I'm just looking through the budget here, and I see that there is the 12,500 for 2022 that was budgeted, but there's 19,500 for
yes.
2023. So there's actually 7,000 more in there.
The $7,000 for the trip to Japan.
In Japan.
So that's where the extra comes from.
Gotcha.
But I'm thinking that there's going to be more of just an interest in conferences as people learn and get up to speed, which is great. They are great learning experiences. So I just want to make sure that we're being responsible and thinking about what we want to accomplish. That being said, in the past, staff have helped council books, items, conferences. That takes up a significant amount of some staff's time. So I would ask that there is nothing in the policy that states that. So I think we're all adults. If we could book our conferences on our own, they're all through online, and we count our expenses and then we bring those in, and then we have those.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, if it's helpful, we can send out conference dates,
Yeah.
early bird registration deadlines, so that we
Absolutely.
can get the best rates and provide that to all of council so that you're aware of kind of all the pertinent information.
Absolutely, that stuff's great information, but when it comes to booking transportation and stuff, that can be costly on staff time, and so I think that we're all aware of how to do that sort of thing. Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens?
Are you just talking for any stays or transportation if it wasn't close in that respect, or are you talking the conference itself as well?
The conference themselves as well. This is something that each individual councillor usually is wanting to go to, and so it should be up to each individual one of us when to book those items. I think that creates a little responsibility as well. Now, under circumstances, special circumstances, if you're unable to go, for sure, that I think we're all understanding of if something comes up, like a significant situation, that the cost will be covered, but at the same time, it's, trying to be cognizant of staff time and the responsibilities we're asking to do more and more, so.
Okay, so may I suggest reallocating the town crier $1,000? I'm just suggesting and adding another, so sorry, Mr. Mayor, how much would you like to add to the conferences? So you said
I was-
total of 15,000?
I was just suggesting $2,500 more.
Okay.
Depending on, and I think that will get us within the realm of what I'm
Into
hearing. And then, again, we can talk about the town crier. The marketing promotion budget, I think, is in the ballpark where it needs to be, but how it's allocated and how we spend it
Okay.
is another discussion for council, for sure. And I think that'll be informed through discussions on communications and going forward. But, yep, Deputy Mayor?
I just want to go back to the comment of having council pre-register ahead of time. I appreciate, wanting to free up staff time, but I also want to acknowledge, there could be a councillor in the future that can't afford to pre-register and prepay for those expenses ahead of time. They may only be able to afford to go if they're able to go through the town. So I just don't want to make the assumption that we all have the privilege to pay on our own dime and get the money back eventually when you put it in. So I'm okay with it. It doesn't affect me personally, but that's not to say that it wouldn't affect, I won't make assumptions about anyone in the room either or councillors in the future.
No, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. So I'm sure that can be accommodated through request, but generally, I'd just like to see us take the responsibility of making sure that we're aware of where we're going and how we're going, and making sure that we try to limit our impact from council on staff as much as possible to make sure that they're doing their other roles. So, but that can be definitely accommodated. Again, yeah, if there's an issue, some people don't have credit cards or anything like that, so that's what can be taken into consideration for sure. Any further discussion on, would staff like clarification on the town crier, perhaps? Or?
I like the idea of all communications being done through the town crier, so we'll put that in the policy, and that solves the problem, so.
All residents meet outside at 9 a.m. on every Wednesday. At one time, that was the communication. We also had 6 newspapers, but I think specifically in there, I think the budget's good, but I think there's some work to do on how we can always allocate that differently throughout the year if council decides. Councilor Van Kooten-Bosens?
Are we taking it out? Because I would like to confirm if he's still our town crier. I don't want to take it out. There hasn't been anything going on, right, with COVID. This would be the first year that things would start to be coming back. They canceled everything because of, let's face it, I mean, when you're crying, there's going to be some spit factor happening, and that is, they canceled like all of the different, if you want to call them competitions or whatever, but they canceled all that. So I would like us to confirm, first of all, if he has retired or not retired in that respect. So I would be more comfortable in leaving it until we've confirmed that. I never even thought about it. I mean, I could have reached out to Doug ahead of time, but I didn't think about that. So I would like us to confirm, first of all, before we decide to take it out.
If we need a town crier still, or if we want one?
Well, I think there's an element to the town crier. Yes, it's an old way of doing things, but when you're going to do stuff at the harvest market, It would be kind of cool to have the town crier come back. And, I mean, we couldn't ask him to do things like that last year, but, you know, maybe that's something we could have him come back. He was always at the harvest market before. We've had town crier competitions here in this town. It was downtown, and there was different judges and the whole bit, and, you know, town criers came from all over. I don't know whether it's even in existence at this point, but again, they haven't been meeting because of COVID, so I'm not in favor of just getting rid of the town crier. I think we need to have more discussion about that if that's the case, but maybe I'm by myself on that one too, so.
Can we nominate a counselor to be the town crier? No. Okay, no clarification.
I'm not taking on that, but I will take on the responsibility. I'd be happy to take on the responsibility of reaching out to Doug,
Okay.
and then coming back to council with that information as to what's happening with crying competitions and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, town criers were used a lot more commonly a few years ago. You know, it became sort of a interesting thing to have, and a lot of municipalities got them probably about 15 years ago, I would say. I haven't seen them used as much in the last few years, and of course, COVID did impact that. I suspect the town crier that we still have an agreement with, but it's more about how many times a year we've utilized them. And I apologize for being sort of joking about it, but in all honesty, as we're talking about communications, it could be something that we could consider through that communications part of the process. Is that something that we'd like to do to raise the specter of some of the messages we're trying to get through? So if council would like to leave it in, it's not a big ticket item, obviously, and we could look at that in a larger picture of communications. And I'm sorry for being flippant about that, but I think it is good for council to consider it that way.
Perfect. Any further discussion on the council budget? Seeing none, moving on. Yep, thank you for that.
So the next one is the Chief Administrative Officer budget. So it's an increase of 1% or $4,200. So there is variety of factors playing into this number. So we have incorporated a reduction in our professional and legal fees of $30,000, mainly due to the end of contract for our landfill consultants who helped us to battle the landfill. And then there was a reduction of $50,000, which was set aside in 2022 for the physician recruitment committee. So that initiative, I believe Curtis can provide more information, but we left a $10,000 budget for that committee so they can operate and meet in 2023. Curtis?
So we budgeted $50,000 to look at what the future is. So the doctors are all crammed into one floor of the hospital. There's no room to add any more doctors to either of the teams. So we felt it would be prudent to hire a consultant that can look at it, because there's a lot of acronyms that I don't know what they mean, so I'm not the expert in that field and how it all works and the layout, and there's fits and foes, and there's all kinds of different models. And we also didn't want to impact the hospital in a negative fashion in any way. So how do we put all these pieces together? We think we have a solution going forward. So we didn't have to hire that consultant to do that work. So we felt it was prudent to not spend the money if we didn't need to. So we set the $50,000 aside for the committee. So the committee hasn't yet met yet. Monday night, they were just ratified as a committee again. So I think we'll be meeting later this month, but the $10,000 is basically money to do different activities throughout the year towards primary care recruitment and retention.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so next is the clerk's department. So the clerk's department also manages the paratransit and they look after the crossing guards, so it falls under the clerks department umbrella. So that's why I have combined the three in this slide. So the clerks department, an increase of 74,000 or 13%. So mainly it's due to the $50,000 parking study, and the remainder would be COLA, and Danielle would like to add.
I was just going to help you out there. So we have a number of additional Laserfiche licenses that we are purchasing. They've offered us a good price. It's the first year fee is much higher. I think I wrote it down. It's $875. Each year thereafter, that cost for each license goes down to $175, but it's more of a burden at the outset. But I think that's $8,000 or $7,000. It was reflected in the budget for those additional Laserfiche licenses.
And as well, clerks department incorporates an allowance of, I believe it's $6,000 for the outreach application, council engagement outreach application. So we don't know what it's going to be, but we do have money in the budget to make it happen. So the paratransit is $1,500 increase or 4%. So mostly we allocate part of wages, the clerks department admin wages, to take phone calls and coordinate paratransit. So that's mainly what the driving factor of this increase. And then the crossing guards is a decrease of almost $14,000. Again, there was a special project that was done in 2022. So it was a crossing guard gap analysis study, which we budgeted $8,000 in 2022. So that's not happening in 2023. So we have incorporated that in the budget. So if council has any questions regarding those three areas, any other questions? Okay.
Seeing none.
So the IT department is $8,700 increase or a 2% increase. Again, cost of living incorporated. So we have two full-time staff working in that department. There is a savings of $7,000. It's a special testing we have to do every other year for the cybersecurity. It's one of the requirements. Otherwise, we will not get insurance for that. So 2023 is the year we don't have to do it. And then there is an increase of $7,000 for like annual billing and maintenance fees. So what happens when software or applications are implemented, it's reflected in the respective department's budget, but once it's up and running, the annual maintenance fees are shifted to the IT department because they take care of it, they make sure it's all adequate, they do upgrades also, so it's part of their job, so they manage this budget very well. So we're looking at some of the increases like booking, Great Plains we use for accounting, so everything is going up. So that there is an increase of about $7,000 for that. Okay. So the Treasury Department, a decrease of $565,000 or 55%. This is strictly due to the projected increase in our investment income because of the very favorable interest rates this year and also high bank account. We invested, like, as I said, about $10 million into the GICs. We still have about $10 million remaining in our checking, in our high interest savings account. That money is earning interest as well. So we've incorporated a new position of deputy treasurer. There is OMPF funding is part of the Treasury Department budget. The insurance is also part of the Treasury Department budget, so that's an increase of $100,000. The cemetery, the transfers to the cemetery board is also under the Treasury. It's an increase of $13,000. They have submitted their budget, so it's a final number. Then we also look after the insurance, like the health insurance premiums for our retirees. It forms a part of the Treasury budget. So we have added few people to our retiree pool, and with the increases for the health insurance, it was 4% this year. So that's additional cost associated with that, and the development charges study of $35,000. This doesn't impact the levy, it's in and out, it's an expense, and then a transfer from reserve fund to pay for that is reflected in the budget. So the next is tax adjustment and tax levy. So the $374,000, that's the tax levy increase as recommended in this draft. We're also looking at an increase in tax adjustments of $71,000. So we have some reduction in, so that number, tax adjustments, it's like a net between the refunds and anything we receive as supplementary taxation. So unfortunately, with the last year was really, we saw a downturn on our building activity, so we did not as many houses that was built, so we will see that reflected in our supplementary taxation in 2023 because it takes MPAC about a year to actually assess the new builds, new properties. And the industrial, it's not incorporated because it takes longer to actually construct those sites, and it will take MPAC another year to assess them. So up to 2 years to assess the industrial and commercial properties. So the building inspections, as you can see, the building inspections is 0 because it doesn't impact our levy. It's a self-sustaining department, so they pay for the operations of this department through the building permits revenues received through the building permits. So there is no impact on the levy. However, if you look at their budget, there is some changes in the operating expenses to incorporate the wage increases or some new software. They would like to expand the cloud permit now and add some extra functionality to this software. So that's incorporated in the budget. The property standards falls under that department, but it's not self-sustaining, so we'll see a $50,000 increase due to the enforcement proposed. And the town hall, a decrease of $7,000. Again, it's mainly, we've revised our utility budget for our utilities to just, we budgeted high in the last couple of years, so we are saving some money here on, especially on the electricity cost.
We're certainly seeing the savings from the building automation system, so that's good. For the public who's not here, it turns off at nighttime, so the council chamber gets cold at night. But,
I was just going to say, that's where we're saving is the
that's what we're doing to save you money. We're being cold.
Okay, now we know. I'd like to put that 7,000 back in. How's that sound?
So the next is our fire department, which consists of the fire administration and fire facility. So the fire administration is an increase of $57,000 or 5%. So again, we're looking at the cost of living increases for full-time staff and volunteer firefighters. There was some inflationary increases to the clothing, uniforms, like the gear, not just clothing, but the actually fire equipment, fire gear. John also, our fire chief, incorporated some savings in the training budget of $7,000. And of course, the vehicle repair, maintenance, and fuel cost is rising, so we've incorporated $11,000 to account for that.
Continue, please.
So next, the police budget that consists of the OPP, Police Services Board, and the facility where the Ingersoll Detachment is residing currently. So the OPP budget is mainly the contract we pay to for policing services, our annual contract that comes. They send the billing in December, sometimes November, so that is what we actually is going to pay in 2023. The police services budget is developed by the Police Services Board. They approve it at their meeting through a resolution, and it's forwarded to the Finance Department to be included in our the town budget because it does have impact on our levy. And the OPP facility is a reduction of $3,500. Again, I believe it was just utilities that was a bit of revising budget for the utilities.
Deputy Mayor, please.
So does this revision include Mayor Petrie's motion from earlier? Okay,
I believe we're still waiting on a staff report to come back to implement that.
perfect, okay. And another question, if I may, through you, for the benefit of the public, I shared some information about the tax bill for the median home, which generated lots of questions. People were surprised. People don't usually know how much we spend on anything. So they were surprised to see the policing budget. Some people thought we should have more. Some people thought we should have less. And, why aren't we as council asking for more or asking for less? So, for the benefit of the public, you talked a little bit about, it's approved by the Police Services Board and, accepted by council. So I just wondered if you could maybe add a little bit more in terms of, how the budget gets from there to here, and if council can make any changes to it.
So as you can see from this slide, the bulk of the cost is the OPP contract, which we don't, the only part we could control was the enhancement, which we took care of it, and that's what allowed us to save money of in excess of $200,000. The other, it's the ministry, they have a formula, they have a methodology, how they allocate the cost amongst all these different municipalities. So we unfortunately don't have control over that. That's what it is. So there is a fixed portion of the cost, and there is a variable component. The variable component, based on the number of calls for service they receive in town. So does council have control over it? I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, a positive from the OPP, the call for service. Going back, we were paying a lot more because it was the way it was funded was different, and so it was not fair for urban municipalities versus rural. And I hear there still hasn't been decided whether it's fair yet or not, or whether, so there's still discussions on, and we could see a reduction or a raise depending on how that comes out. But The good thing about it is if we have a call for service and it's one officer, we pay a price. If we have a call for service and we have 3 helicopters and a search team, it's still the same price. It's a call for service, but those resources are there. So it's one of those things where, it doesn't matter, there is that fixed portion, but then we have all those extra resources that we don't get billed extra for. If we had our own police service and we needed 3 helicopters and we're paying for that, the whole thing. So we don't have a full cost of it, but when it comes to police services board, they set their budget. Council, traditionally, the police services board, you'll see them in London and stuff, they'll come, okay, this is the budget that we need, and council will have a lot of questions for them, they can have more control over their service level. But then it has to go to an arbitration, you just can't say no. You have to have reasons and you have to work it out, but we can definitely, we have less say because we are an OPP. Councilor Hughes, did you have something to add?
No, actually, I was just going to say exactly what you said. Yes, back, I'm going to say 6, 7, 8 years ago, our cost per household for the policing was close to $1,000. Actually, it was the previous mayor, Ted Komisky, who was on the police spearheaded, he didn't spearhead it, but he was on a police review board where that's when this implication of the reduced costs come to fruition. So our price per household went from 800 down to about, I think, 500, 600 kind of thing. So considerably more reasonable, more within what costing would be if we did have our own police force. But as Mayor Petrie said, if there was all the extra that we needed, tracker dogs, the ERT, helicopters, whatever the case may be, that would be an extra charge on top of what we would normally pay. Our pricing for the OPP, policing's always been an issue over the past number of years. Referring back to when I was on the police services board at the time, it was getting information out, getting the public educated, which was the biggest part. And that's what the PSB should be doing. And I believe this PSB has been trying to over the past couple of years. As you can imagine, would be difficult. I can't speak to the PSB because I'm not on the PSB, but that's one of the mandates, is to communicate to the general population that, hey, this is what you're getting. If you have a problem within the community, contact the police services board, any member of the police services board, and they can bring your concerns to the OPP at their monthly meetings.
Excellent. Any further comments or questions? No? Moving on?
Yes, and I would like to add to the OPP billing. So they bill us, they have estimates, right? So they would bill us estimated calls for service because the fixed component doesn't change. But then they reconcile it, and then we either pay more or receive a refund from them. But the reconciliation is, so in 2023, they would reconcile 2021. So it's kind of 2 years behind. So that's how, or 2020 even. So that's how it works. So eventually we pay what we should pay, but it just may be delayed a little bit. And I'm just looking at the cost per property, it's $430. Yeah. So the engineering department, an increase of $65,000. Again, we're looking at the cost of living for staff. We've added $20,000 to the contracted services budget just because we are in the process of filling the vacancy in that department of the town engineer or a senior technician, whatever it end up being. But meanwhile, we need services of a professional licensed engineer, so that's incorporated in the budget. And we also increased transfers to reserves according to the approved asset management plan by $50,000 for that department. So that's what the $64,000 pretty much explains by those two. things. And the street lights are a reduction of $5,800. Again, it's mostly the utilities, the electricity we pay to Erie Thames for the street, or Hydro One for the street lights in town. And some maintenance when street poles, street lights get hit, we have to replace them. Unfortunately, it's becoming more difficult to go after the whoever caused the accident because all this information is not readily available to us. Before OPP was working with us, now it's really a challenge to get this information. So Public Works, an 11% increase, or $214,000. Again, so we're adding one full-time position and 2 summer students, and the cost of living. There is some increase in the fuel and maintenance of the cost of fleet maintenance. We're looking at revising machine time rates to incorporate the increases and the increased costs of the equipment, the heavy equipment they have to buy, the big dump trucks, loaders, etc. We increased transfers to reserve as per the asset management recommendations. And there are some increases in the sidewalk, winter control, winter maintenance contract of $10,000. We just received tenders for the tree trimming and cutting trees, and was an increase of $15,000. Yes, so previously we budgeted $25,000 and now it's $40,000. And we received 3 bids, maybe 4 bids. So yes. And the increases for the salt and any other supplies for the winter control.
Any questions for that section?
Okay.
Nope, moving on.
So community services, we're looking at parks, arena, and the senior center. So the parks admin, a decrease of $17,000 or almost $18,000. We budgeted for 2022, we had to employ vaccine screeners, so they were screening people for all the vaccinations. So that's a saving of $40,000. There's also, that's for the arena, but there is also, savings for training. That's in the admin section. So there was one employee taking courses, like the university courses, and I believe that employee has completed the courses. So there's savings of $11,000. Rising fuel prices, we've incorporated that in this budget. We also increased transfers to reserves to the parks equipment reserve. We increased it by $50,000. And then for the senior center, the transfer to reserve, we increased it by $25,000 just based on the our 10-year forecast and the facility assessment that requires some work.
Mr. Van Koophuisens.
I'm confused. The increased transfer for the parks equipment of the 50,000, was that put into the arena instead of parks?
No, it was put into parks.
Okay, because the arena went up by 58,000, and there's nothing explaining that.
Yes,
So
I will
that's-
find the arena, just a minute.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I just thought I would ask it, just seemed a little, I thought maybe it's backwards, that's all. I would expect the parks to increase, but not the arena.
And I do apologize, it is the arena, $2,000.
So, is it supposed to be in the arena then, or should
Yes, that's for the, sorry, that's for the $50,000 for the Merck. Sorry, yeah. I apologize for that.
So just to clarify, is there an increase of transfers to the Parks Equipment Reserve?
No,
No,
there
okay.
isn't. No. I'll just go by, sorry, I will just go line by line, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yes, so we increased the arena by $50,000 to the Merck Reserve. Just going parks. Yes, and we did increase parks, sorry, by $30,000, not 50, to the parks. But there is some savings in the salaries and wages that compensated, that's why there's overall a decrease. There was because of I mentioned about the restructuring at the community center, so there was a couple positions that wages were allocated to parks. Now they are no longer allocated to parks, they 100% VPCC cost, if that makes sense. Okay. So VPCC admin, or VPCC center, so we're looking at an increase of almost $140,000 for the admin department. The new position I mentioned is now 100% allocated to the Victoria Park Community Center when it was like split 30-30-30 between parks, the arena, and I believe Fusion Center. So now it's 100% Victoria Park Community Center. They also are proposing additional part-time staff for like the admin portion, like the front desks, and for that part, that would be the main driver of that budget. And in the FTEs, I believe it's two full-time, equivalent to FTEs. So for the aquatics, the same. They are bringing their operating expenses more to the 2022 budget was already very close to pre-COVID levels, but it was not 100% pre-COVID levels. So they are just trying to make sure they have enough supplies for all the programs they're going to provide, the aquatics programs, and the staff. They are asking for additional FTE, for about 1 additional FTE, if I'm not mistaken. For the fitness and programs, it's the same. They're just bringing more staff. They're increasing. It's mainly the wages, salaries and wages, the impact. And the VPCC facility, a savings of $47,000, as I mentioned before. That position was allocated between all these different departments, so now it just moved to the VPCC admin, and there is a reduction in the VPCC facility to offset that extra cost.
I believe there's a change to the way memberships are allocated as well. There's a proportion of the pen, because it's all one membership now. It was, you'd buy a fitness membership versus aquatics membership, but we've changed that with the booking software, so I did notice a difference.
Yes, so there is, now they just charge a membership fee, and you can attend swimming, you can use the swimming pool or fitness programs, but we are allocating that membership. We split it 30-30-30 35, something like that. I don't remember exactly, between all these different areas. So yeah, that's how that works.
Obviously, the facility is in a restructuring right now and is trying to get towards that new goal of new organizational structure goal. Will that be complete this year, or will that be ongoing?
I believe it will be completed this year. Yes, absolutely. And Michael can,
Yeah, that's the intention. However, we will be sort of analyzing to see how that worked and whether that was successful or not as the year progresses. And by the end of the year, you may see some changes in the budget for next year, but it is the intention that it'll be complete with these steps.
Excellent. Any further questions? Seeing none.
sorry, the Fusion Center asked an increase, like combined, because it's divided between like two areas, Fusion programs and Fusion facilities. It's $177,000 increase. So the big part is a transfer to reserve as per the asset management plan recommendation of $100,000. And also Fusion was pretty much closed last year, like half a year. So now they are back to fully operational. So they're looking at hiring, they're looking at providing senior summer camp programs, and they asking for staff to provide this program. So it has been incorporated in this number. And also, I believe they budgeted before for, they had some programs that they were charging a separate fee for. From how they abandoned that, so now they just charge a $5 membership fee for the year, and the kids can attend any classes they wish. So they have eliminated that line from the budget. It was about $20,000, I believe they budgeted for that. And unfortunately, we see a decline in donations. Even our partner that donates, United Way, even their donations have declined. Over the last several years, we have seen decline year over year. So that's been reflected in this budget as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, they suffered during the pandemic as well, so they had to take a tight look at how they were allocating, and I know they changed their allocation structure, so that's too bad. Certainly, always like to see the community support Fusion. We're seeing a great support from the citizens for it, and so I think there's some work that we can do as well to help promote that. And if anybody wants to make those donations, they help go a long way, right? So I can definitely see. I know we tried to get some revenue by offering some added programs. Of course, it creates some. There was always programs available for those who couldn't afford. Was it more of a just that people weren't attending the programs, or was it accessibility?
I think it's because of COVID.
Yeah.
I blame everything on COVID. It seems like I do, but it was definitely because of COVID. And then they couldn't retain staff because it was, we called them back, and then 2 weeks later we laid them off, so they couldn't retain staff to actually provide these services, these programs. Yeah.
Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. First is on the donation side. Are there any other large donators out there that we could leverage or to look at in regards to increasing our donation pot that you could think of, or that we as a council during our delegations could approach one of the ministries?
Mr. Graves?
Yeah, I know that several years ago that was tried, but we couldn't seem to get much uptake from any of the province. There were several studies that were produced to show the impact on the community and the positivity, but some of the ministries took that to say, oh, see, you should be reducing your negative impact on your community and your calls for service through the OPP, so you're saving money that way. So it is difficult. It might be something that we want to look at to see if there's ways that we can make more promotion that, and show people that they can give donations to the facility more. And that might be something, and again, that might end up dovetailing with our communications policy. So we'll pursue that as staff.
Okay. And question number 2 actually is for,
Just before, I think Irina would like to add something to
Yes,
that.
so in the past, I recall we used to approach corporate companies in Ingersoll. I remember banks giving donations to Fusion Center. They stopped that. Cami did. Cami still does, but it's not a yearly donation. So sometimes they would donate $10,000 for a specific purpose. But before, I remember, I think it was RBC we received donations from. So we can apply, actually, our insurance company, we can approach them. They may be interested. So it's just some ideas that come to mind. But
We also have some great new companies that are in the area who may have some interest in what goes on at Fusion. So.
exactly. And then question number 2, actually, it's for the CAO. And whoever else on staff would be able to answer. Would our volunteer policy, once it's come forward, would that help alleviate some expense as well?
I don't know that it'll alleviate much expense. You might help provide some coverage. The limitations of what we're going to be able to do with volunteers in that facility because of their impact with, youth and stuff like that will be limited. So the volunteer programs we probably run are going to be more like assistance or minor, sort of minor uses in there, especially for the first couple of years as we sort of get the volunteer policy up and running and as we implement it. So I wouldn't say that you're going to save any money doing that. The other thing is when you run volunteers like that, you still have to supervise them and train them and do some of that. So you may, even if you did save money on some side, you might add more supervisory roles, so you would lose it on the other side. So
Any further questions? Seeing none, please move forward.
so next department is museum, an increase of $92,000. We're adding one full-time position of assistant curator, cost of living increases. We also incorporated OMERS for part-time staff that works at the museum because now OMERS is offered to everybody. And then the special project of the video content for the museum of $10,000.
Any questions on that one? Seeing none.
And last but not least, economic development. So a minor increase of $3,300. Again, the step increases. There is some reduction. We decreased the provision for the community improvement grants. We used to budget $25,000. We decreased that provision because we have a healthy reserve for that. And as from what I hear, we also will revisit our community improvement plan that will probably, and we can reevaluate it next year, the actual allowance. And we also put up, if council may recall, we used to transfer $150,000 into the unfinanced industrial land reserve fund. So that has been paid off because we sold the industrial land, so we were able to pay off that debt to ourselves. So we reallocating this $150,000 now just to be transferred into the industrial land reserve fund for any future opportunities that council may have. So, and the savings also, there was a, why am I calling it zoning bylaw? It's not zoning, it's secondary planning, sorry, of $150,000. So it's a one-time project and we're not expecting, it's going to be finished in 2023, but the actual budget, what we budgeted in 2022. And there is part of it will be covered through the development charges.
Excellent. No, I agree with the, with putting that in the land reserve. We all have to remember our reserves are all just, they have a specific name here, but they all are reserves unless they're dedicated reserves. But I think that, given the situation, that we never know what comes available, and we think we learn, I think going through the process, although it was tedious and definitely a learning process for staff, and they may not want to do it again, there may be an opportunity down the road to have another development park, which ended up working out very well for the town. So, and I thank staff for completing that. I know you have all this knowledge.
That's right.
We might give you the opportunity to do it again.
We'll do what council directs.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Okay. So moving on to the reserve and reserve funds balances. So we are projecting to end 2023 with a little over $21 million in our reserve and reserve funds. As you can see, I have separated them between the reserves and obligatory reserve funds. So the reserves at 15 million and the obligatory would be development charges, the gas tax money. So it's almost $6 million we're projecting. I just want to underline this is our projections. So we are still working on closing 2022. So the beginning balances for 2023 are projections at this point, so they may change a little bit. And we also will have hopefully we'll have a surplus in as of end of 2022 that most likely will be transferred to reserves, so that has not been incorporated in that number.
Any questions on the reserve from council? Seeing none.
And that just show the trend, how we have been building our reserves. And so if council has any questions, as you can see, we have come a long way since 2015.
And I believe you explained before on the reserves that we're seeing a little dip because there's so many carryover projects from 2022.
Yes, in 2021 a lot of it was the industrial lands too.
And now we're literally seeing dividends being paid by having those extra reserves in there. And they're not just extra money, they're there for reasons, but they're actually contributing to lowering the tax rate, which is...
To smooth the tax
Yeah.
levy impact. Yeah. And as for the debt, we are projecting no debt in 2023, and the outstanding debt at the end of 2023 will be at $1.2 million. And this is just another view of outstanding debt.
Just for
And that
clarification,
concludes-
I don't know if it's been explained before, it has in past years, but even though we own $1.2 million, we just can't go pay that off tomorrow because we have debentures for a specific time period. There's just not an opportunity it would be lovely just to wipe that out. I know some of our neighbors pay more per year than what we owe, so it'd be nice to clear that off, but it's just not possible. Or
And to
is it?
have some debt is not a bad idea when we approach government for funding, because they do look at our financial position, and if we look too good, that could impact their decision-making process.
It could, but if we had to finance a large reserve, multi-use on our own, we heard that would be a 17% increase, which could also be detrimental to our economic growth, so. It might be in their best interest to do that if they're listening.
And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irina. I'll speak for myself and then I'll open the floor. I think this is a very responsible budget. I think it goes towards our goals, and it certainly is for a first term, for the first year of this new term. It's a good starting place to be in, considering what the world's like with inflation. The policies that were put in place in the past are literally paying dividends, and it puts us in a strong future to be able to plan going forward, to do the things that Ingersoll wants to see in the strategic plan and others. For those of you at home who may think there wasn't a lot of questions asked tonight, I can tell you that I want to commend members of council. I've heard from staff that you've done your homework, you've asked the questions ahead of time to get clarification, and so the public should be very happy with that process. It makes getting to the important stuff that we did for tonight a good thing, and to be able to have that clarification before we discuss. So kudos to all council for doing that, and thank you for staff for answering all those questions, because I'm sure some of them are the same. But we try to, we can't have meetings behind closed doors, and we don't. So each individual councillors took the time to put their questions forward on the budget, and I certainly thank you for answering the ones I had as well. So would any other councillor like to speak on the budget? Or? Yeah, Mr. Graves.
Yeah, I'd like to commend Irina. It's been a great deal of work, and Irina so seamlessly answers some of those questions in her presentation, so that I know there's sometimes where I'm waiting for the question to come and I'm going to answer them, but she kind of works them into her presentation, so I know several of your questions were answered in the way that she presents, so it kind of takes those away. So it makes my life a little easier, so thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yes, Irina, I'd like to echo the mayor's sentiment. Fantastic job, and it always astonishes me, your depth of knowledge with your ability to answer all the questions that we do throw at you, as intricate as they are, or as just generalization, general question that we have. Continue to be astonished at your diverse knowledge, and you can see the computer rolling there once in a while, but no, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic job on this budget again this year. Thank you very much.
Reverend Cooten-Bosons.
Well, I'm not going to say a whole lot more because you've already said it, but all the staff, Irina, underneath your leadership for this budget, I'm not excluding our CAO, but the budget is you. And every staff member stepped up this year. I think it's probably one of the best that we've had. And I echo that from the mayor and Councillor Hughes. I don't see a whole lot of fat that we could trim. And I have in past years. And this year, you guys trimmed it, and you trimmed it further even after you brought it to us, the amount that you would come back and say, oh, well, we don't need this. You know what? We don't need that. Or we can't do that because we can't get it anyway. So we're going to trim it from here. We'll push it off for another year if that's the case. And I give you kudos for that, because some people would have just said, you know what, the council doesn't seem to be too upset with what we're doing, but I think that all of you took into consideration the fact that we're going back to the taxpayers. And I think that the taxpayers should be very proud of the staff that we have working here at Town Hall and all of the other facilities, because you do a great job, and that's why we've hired you all, and thank you for bringing a fantastic budget. I'm very happy with it. I know that we've still got a few more things to discuss and that kind of thing, but thank you.
Further comments? Yeah, you brought up a good point there, and I don't want to let go as well, as that staff were showing that this was an active process when they were going through it. There was active decisions, okay, we need this, we don't need this, and so that's really awesome to see. It just wasn't, okay, let's add 10% or whatever. There was thought process there, and it wasn't unnoticed, and so we really appreciate that, because it shows that everybody's paying attention and really trying to, they're running their department, so it's great to see from a council and a taxpayer's perspective. Okay, I will ask, we didn't, right now, I guess we're going to accept the presentation. There is nothing to set the presentation, we're just having a discussion, I guess. So we will go into notices of motions, and I will introduce mine, I guess. Actually, what I'm going to do is, Councillor Youss and I have very similar thoughts. I think our motions are very together. So I'm actually going to withdraw mine, and we can discuss Councillor Youss's, which is very similar. I think that we can accomplish something through that and simplify the process. So I will defer to Councillor Youss to introduce his first motion, please.
Is there a procedure or policy that we need to introduce these for tonight? Because I know they've just been, this is the first reading of them. Do we have to?
I can respond. Because it's part of the budget, usually the notice of motion is something outside of what's being considered on the budget, which is why it's brought forward as part of that notice of motion. We're really looking at amending the budget, something that's an agenda item in front of you. So as long as you move and get a seconder, you're good.
Right, perfect. That's clarification I was looking for. So the first notice of motion I have is moved by myself, Councillor Youss, whereas the town of Ingersoll is in urgent need of a new arena. Whereas council of the town of Ingersoll recognizes that need has started the process of securing upper tier funding to assist in building a new MERC, as well as the building of reserve fund to help fund the MERC. And whereas the increase in property taxes is significantly lower than in previous years, therefore I move that the council of the corporation of the town of Ingersoll increase the money added to the reserve fund in an effort, the MERC reserve fund, in an effort to build this fund in a shorter time frame.
Seconder, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens. As the mover, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I would. Thank you. After reflection and discussion with a few people, instead of adding an increase on the tax levy, I would suggest that we would take a look at taking a percentage of the dividend that we get on a yearly basis, have been receiving on a yearly basis from the Earth Corporation, that we earmark that to be added to the MERC Reserve Fund, unless somebody would like to add that to the tax levy for the increase of this year.
As the seconder, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
I don't have a problem with it, and I think that we could look at, there was some discussion happening, and it's not that we're trying to pre-plan anything coming in, but when you're talking with different staff and you're able to get ideas flowing, one of the ideas was, we earmark, instead of it being an amount of money, that we say 90%. So whatever that amount of money might be coming from Earth, that we could, say 90% of it, we want to put it into the MERC. We could say 100%, if that's what we wanted to do, but I think 90 or 95% might be a good number to go with, and then, again, whatever that amount is, I mean, we can always increase next year again as well. We don't think that the MERC is going to be this year, but we need to continually put that money aside, and I agree with that, because there's no way that we can afford it without upper tier or us putting more money aside. So I do agree with that, but definitely I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts around the table.
Okay. Just before we do that, given the motion that was put forward and then the ideas now, I think we're maybe getting away from what the original stated motion is, because it's definitely changed from what was read out, because those there's just nothing mentioned about the dividend. Yeah, I think either a new motion is brought forward, or we can, maybe.
Can the mover and the seconder have 5 minutes, and
No, absolutely.
we could amend our motion to come before?
Absolutely. Do you need any paperwork to do that, or do you have some?
Well, if I had another piece of paper.
I have a motion, I have blanks, I'm prepared. There's no excuses. So, actually, we're only at 8 o'clock. If council is good, we have a recess for 10 minutes, and we can have a break. Would you like to make a motion for a recess?
Sure, 10 minutes? Moved by myself, seconded by
Councillor Hudson?
Councillor Hudson, that we take a 10-minute recess.
Discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. We are at recess for 10 minutes. Okay. We are back, except our seconder just left. Oh, okay.
She's stretch walking.
She's having technical difficulties and we'll be
Yes.
returning shortly. I believe we have a amendment
Yes,
to
we
be
do.
moved.
Yes, we
Excellent,
do.
please do so.
Did you want me to read the full motion again, or just read the affected parts?
How about we do the whole thing and then what the amendment is?
Yeah.
Yeah, just read the whole new thing and then we'll be able to point out the amendment.
Perfect, okay. So the motion as amended, whereas the town of Ingersoll is in urgent need of a new arena, whereas the council of the town of Ingersoll recognizes this need and has started the process of securing upper tier funding to assist in building a new MRC, as well as the building of reserve fund to help fund the MRC. And whereas the increase in property taxes is significantly lower than in previous years, therefore I move that the council of the corporation of the town of Ingersoll increases the money added to this reserve in an effort to build this fund in a shorter time frame by $130,000, which would bring our budget percentage to 3.08% increase. And the council have at a future meeting a discussion of where the earth dividend is to be allocated.
And there's a seconder to the amendment. That's correct, Councillor Van Kooten Bosons. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Van Kooten Bosons.
So essentially, instead of, because we don't know what that earth dividend is going to be, and we thought, we want to make sure that there is some significant money going into to that MRC reserve. We figured if we did 130,000, it's approximately a 0.8% increase with the 130,000. And then, but we need to have discussions about once we get that dividend and at a future meeting. But we don't know what that money is yet. So we want to make sure that it's on the books, that we talk about that in the future in that respect. So we're not leaving it, 90% or whatever in that respect. So hope that helps. Does anybody, does that clarify it for everybody?
Deputy Mayor.
I mean, I would have been in favor either way to put earth towards the MRC, even if we don't know the amount. Reason being, we have a capital asset management plan for our other assets, so we could use that in a discretionary way towards something like the MRC, even if we didn't know the amount. But I'm also, that money's not here and we don't know the amount anyway, so there's no harm in waiting. So I'm supportive either way.
Councillor Hudson, do you have a question or comment? No? I'm okay with this. Again, I had emotions earlier, and the amount was $130,000, and it was based off the original budget being 2.2% and taking that up to 3%. And as much as we want to keep the budgetary increases as low as possible, given the climate out there with inflation going 6, 7, 8%, I think the staff did an amazing job, and the corporation has done very well to limit that liability and exposure to that market. And so I think we have the ability now to add a little bit more and still be well within lines of being responsible and reasonable. And the grid, we don't know what next year is going to bring. So if we have the opportunity this year, I think we should add more to fund the things that we really want to work towards. And next year, if it's not if the world is not as good to us, then we have room to be able to not add that money next year and still come out with the same scenario. I agree with the approach of waiting to see what that dividend would look like if there's going to be one. We don't know if it's going to be $25 or $25,000 or $250,000. So getting a specific number of percentage there, I kind of want to see how that would affect the whole budget, but it's certainly worth the discussion of where that money should go because it is It is unbudgeted, so if there is one. So I support the motion. I think that a 3% increase in the reality that we're seeing, our neighbors are, we've seen 6 and higher percentage increases, but our policies are certainly, again, helping us weather that storm, and I think we're still being responsible, so I would support that. Amendment. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The amendment is carried. We'll now consider the original motion. Does anybody need the original motion, the amended motion read? Seeing not. Any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Youssef, you have another notice of motion, please.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Hughes, whereas the town of Ingersoll has in the past held Canada Day celebrations, however, in the recent past has not. And whereas many residents have raised questions as to why we as a municipality do not host any celebrations, forcing these residents to enjoy celebrations outside of the municipality. Therefore, I move that Council include in this budget monies to host the Canada Day celebration, which would include fireworks, on July the 1st to celebrate as a Community Canada Day. And that Council instruct staff to start a conversation with our neighboring municipalities to alternate hosting Canada Day celebrations with equal financial contributions by all municipalities involved.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hudson. As the mover, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. The motion does basically speak for itself. However, I didn't include any costs because I truly don't know what costs would be to put a celebration on. I know fireworks can be very expensive. Yeah, it's something that in the past we haven't done a whole lot of, and I think we need to start looking at hosting some of these celebrations locally.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson, as a seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to say that I agree with you. I mean, growing up in this town, we used to do that. As a family, we always went down to the park and did that, and the last number of years, it hasn't been something that we've had here, and people are going to Woodstock, they're going to London, and they're spending their money in those places as well. Be nice to keep everybody here.
Further discussion? My biggest thing is that we're doing a budget, so we would need a dollar amount on what we would spend on that. And so, again, that's something that to support it, I would have to know what we were willing to put in as a council, and I think staff would need that direction as well. As much as I'm supportive of having, talking to other neighbors, I think it might be difficult on who, everybody's going to want it in their community. And I don't know if that's the intentions of the motion is to make sure everybody's doing as much as they can in their own community, or they'd like to contribute and have like a neighborhood party in Ingersoll. So if there's clarification on that from the mover.
Dollar-wise, if we add it to the budget, it would of course bring it up even higher. It'd be just 0.0s of an increase. Would, and unfortunately, the community services manager isn't here. Would the CAO have an idea of what historically we spent on different celebrations such as this?
I know one of our ones a few years ago, we spent around $20,000. So, and I know fireworks are getting more expensive out there, is what they're telling me. The ones I'm trying to buy out on the street are getting more expensive. So I would suggest that you probably want to put like something like $25,000 into a budget to say this is a starting place. And then my suggestion would be to ask staff to do a report of what kind of a celebration $25,000 would get you. How about that?
I have a suggestion as well. As much as, again, I would like to have this happen this year, I think there's an opportunity to have a larger discussion with service clubs and groups out there to see what they would like to, if they're able to participate, and we can make it a bigger party. And maybe that can come back, we can get some estimates from staff, and then maybe we can come back for the 2024 budget season, and we can do a big Ingersoll celebration that year. And then, again, it'd be love to see all the service groups work together on a big item, and this is a perfect example on something that could happen, and put all their talents to use, because they have a lot of experience in town. Councillor Van Kooten Boston's.
Not to put you on the spot, Irina, but could you tell me where 25,000 would bring us to with this budget? I agree with you, Mayor Petrie. I was actually going to say, I think that we should be reaching out to Kiwanis and Lions and to Rotary, and we make it a full-day celebration. It falls on a Saturday this year. I would love to see it happen this year. I'm with both Councillor Hughes and Councillor Hudson, and I too don't have a clue as to how much celebrations like that part of it. I know that putting on barbecues, it might be something that we can do, you know, in conjunction. It can all be down at Victoria Park. And I am pretty sure we could probably bring our service groups together to help plan something like that. So, and I was trying to talk enough so that you would be able to.
Yeah, so I have the number at 3.23.
Or the other option is we pull money from a reserve. I personally would be more comfortable with pulling money from a reserve account. Again, if it's earmarked from a reserve, if the community, you know, there may be a groundswell of support and some fundraising, and maybe it's not made, maybe other groups are planning stuff that we don't know about, and so we can, no, I'm
looking at the faces going on between, because they're probably going, which reserve are we pulling it from, right?
We're just trying to communicate, so.
Yeah, no, I was reading both of your faces.
So here's an option. We do have monies in reserve. Maybe we get a staff report back on what it would cost, and then going forward, we can, it's not going to affect this year's budget besides pulling money out of reserve, and then we can always make that contribution to next year to respond that. And that way we can still make something happen, but we're not necessarily putting on the levy this year without knowing the final cost. Is that a?
Yeah, no, I would. So do I withdraw the budget, or sorry, withdraw the motion, or do I amend the motion?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, because we've talked about a few other programs where we're going to be looking at level of service stuff where we may pull from reserves. And the nice part about doing it that way is it gives you a year to kind of analyze it too, right? So you pull it out of reserve and then you analyze what it'll be. But my suggestion would be that you amend the resolution to say, you know, your whereas clauses are fine, but amend the resolution to say, therefore, staff be directed to write a report of what Canada Day celebrations might cost and where reserves might be drawn from. Something along that lines.
I have the professional notice of motion writer making the amendment. Thank you.
Excellent.
Just whatever you said.
I say these things and I forget what I said.
I'm going to make a friendly amendment, if that's okay. I'm going to make the motion. Moved by myself, seconded by whomever, that the council of the corporation therefore have staff be directed to write a report and bring back to council with a reserve fund that the money could come from. And I think you get the, yeah, okay.
That is a motion to amend the original?
Yes.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it. All right.
Councillor Hudson.
You need to see both of them.
No, is there discussion on the amendment? Deputy Mayor, please.
Through you, I mean, I don't want to send staff on a wild goose chase for events, but when you talk about level of service, it kind of begs the question, you know, does council want to consider other or different community events in future budgets? Like I know today we're talking about Canada Day, and I'm not looking to amend the amendment to do another report, but if there's a different level of service or going back to having more community events, maybe council wants to have that discussion at a later date as well, like 2024 budget kind of discussion. But I think there is a desire locally to bring people back together. And you know, even like Rib Fest comes to mind for me as an example. That's something, I believe the BIA did it, but the town was heavily involved in things like that. So maybe for future consideration, community events in general.
Curtis.
Just for council's information, the events that I'm aware of this year are, and I think Kiwanis is interested in partnering with the museum again on Pumpkin Fest and Harvest Fest, which will happen their regular dates. The BIA is also looking at bringing a new music festival to town, so kind of like Canterbury, but not folk music. So they'd be looking at a 1 or 2 day music festival where they would involve all the service clubs and give them an opportunity to raise funds. So there's a group that's actively pursuing that to occur sometime in September. So I think events are starting to come back post-pandemic, and there is an appetite for that, and there are groups that are stepping up to fill that.
Excellent, and I agree. I think that'd be a great opportunity to be able to have those groups come forward. Love to see that in the community, because people get together and they get stuff done. It's a lot easier it is actually a lot easier for service clubs and individual people to get together than it is sometimes for the town to be able to put those events on, especially with our staffing levels, trying to keep them in check. So any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, voting on the original motion, or the amended motion, sorry. Does anybody need that read again? Seeing not, discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Just a point of clarification, and maybe I should have asked it on the amendment. The allocation, would that include staff time for the event, or is that strictly for fireworks?
Minister.
Or, sorry, we're asking for a report, so it should be fine. Okay, sorry, we're good.
So I will read, just for clarification, it says, whereas the town of Ingersoll has in the past held Canada Day celebrations, however, in the recent past has not, and whereas many residents have raised questions as to why we as a municipality, do not host any celebrations, forcing our residents to enjoy celebrations outside our municipality, therefore, therefore, that the Council of the Corporation Town of Ingersoll, therefore have staff be directed to write a report and bring back to Council with a reserve fund that money could come from. Okay, further discussion?
Clear as mud.
It's not clear, but
I think staff can get, and I think, yeah. Any further discussion on that? All those,
Sorry, I was just going to say I have a comment. Totally agree with Deputy Mayor Wilson in regards to looking at other celebrations that we can in 2024 with our growing diversity here within Ingersoll. It's definitely, we need to make more inclusive a lot of these celebrations and help people understand other aspects of our diversification here.
Councilor Van Koosmausens.
I was just going on that one. Diwali comes to mind. I mean, we heard the celebration that they were having down in the park and had fireworks going off. So we have a growing community there, and I fully agree. So I think that, you know, we can have a good fulsome discussion about this at a future meeting. Thank you for bringing it up.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I have one motion just to make sure that we're clear on from previous for the council conferences and meetings. And a move by myself that the council corporation add $2,500 to the meeting, conference, and training line of the council budget. Is there a seconder for that? Counselor Hudson. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that just kind of confirms that. Okay, we do have, actually, Counselor Hudson, you have a operating budget special reports motion.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll, but we're not receiving it, so. I'm just confused, but we're not, oh, we received it. Okay, sorry. That the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive the 2023 operating budget, and that the Council approve the 2023 operating budget with a property tax levy of $16,832,780, and that the Council approve the required transfers to and from reserves and reserves funds as outlined in the Town of Ingersoll 2023 operating budget. Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead. We can read it and we'll adjust it.
And that a bylaw to establish the appropriate tax rates to affect the 2023 budget approval be brought forward for council consideration in April 2023.
Right, we'll have to adjust that amount just because of the changes we just made. I don't know if Irene, if you've got that amount handy or.
Sorry, it is $16,965,280. 16,965,280.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Counselor Hughes.
Sorry, I believe it was already seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson.
Oh, was it? Okay. Sorry, my apologies for that. Discussion. I'll start off by saying that I think that we should defer this decision tonight. We do have two counselors that are not here. I think we've had a good fulsome discussion. I think we're right there. But I think when it comes to passing the budget, I think we should just, I don't feel we need the 23rd meeting. I think we should wait till the March 6th meeting. I think we're there. But I think we should have input from, allow the public to have input on discussions we've had tonight, as well as counselors who are maybe not here tonight as well. I don't know how the rest of council feels with that. If comfortable, then I'd make a motion to defer, but. Councillor Hudson.
I agree with the decision to defer.
Then I will make a motion to defer to the March 6th meeting. Have a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Wilson, please. And then discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. No, I'll worry about it. Thank you for checking me on that. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. The saying is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and I agree, so I appreciate that, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson. No, absolutely not. So yes, we have that written out, and it is to defer the operating budget decision to the March 6th meeting of council. And that was duly seconded by Councillor Hudson, which I already signed, and we have voted on it. So there's a written copy. Oh, Deputy Mayor Wilson, sorry. Councillor Hudson has been so good at seconding all the motions, it's just, so I will pass that down for the signature there. Excellent, that is deferred. And we can now go into bylaws. I'm just going to check, see, to make sure that we're not. Perfect. Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, can you take us into committee of the whole, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilson, that the mover have leave to introduce and go into committee of the whole on the following bylaws. 1, appoint a treasurer, bylaw 23-5248. 2, confirmation bylaw, February 16th, 2023, bylaw 23-5249. Council in the committee of whole, Mayor Petrie in the chair. On motion, the bylaw is accepted as circulated. That constitutes the first and second reading of the bylaw.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are now in committee of the whole. Are there any, would anybody like to discuss any of the bylaws? Seeing none, I will ask for Deputy Mayor Wilson to rise at the committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the committee do now rise out of the committee of the whole.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And now we will go to, can I have a mover to rise out of, for bylaws for third reading, please? It was assigned to Councillor Bowman, who's not here. Perfect.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the bylaws 23-5248 and 23-5249 be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, and that this constitutes the third reading of the bylaws.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And I will now ask Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens to adjourn the meeting, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll adjourns the February 16th, 2023 special meeting of Council at 8:49 p.m.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.